Oh.
Yeah.
Hello, hello, and welcome to the preview for Orlando City versus Charlotte FC. We are officially in Orlando. I know you guys saw us go live stream yesterday, some of you, but today we are here in Orlando, right, making it happen. Playoff time. I'm here with my man Bam Hour Media. How are you, Brian?
Doing well. It's playoff weekend, baby. Let's go.
Playoff weekend it is, and we're also here with Mr. Aaron Bright. How are you today?
Good, man. I'm excited to be here. Excited to watch Charlotte play. I think today's gonna be a big day for us.
It's going to be a big day. So, what we want to do today is kind of preview this match. We'll talk a little bit about Orlando City. We'll also talk a little bit about their coach, Oscar Parejas versus Dean Smith. I want to also get into, some of the head to heads that we've had because we haven't beaten Orlando this season, right? And amongst other things. So, I guess we'll start off with that. Let's talk a little bit about Orlando's season so far, right? This is Oscar Pareja's fourth year
Yep.
at the helm for them. So far this season, they started a little bit rough, Orlando, right? They had to play CONCACAF Champions League.
Yep.
So this is something that we always discuss about, like, the rosters aren't set up for MLS teams
Yeah.
to be able to compete in multiple tournaments, right? And we saw that a little bit with Orlando City at the beginning of the season, right? They
Mhm.
struggled to find some form. I remember early on they had that big 5-0 loss against Miami, and so they started off slow, but and then here near the end they caught up. They caught a lot of form. So I'll start off with you, Brian. Talk to me about this Orlando team.
Yeah, I mean, so this is now 2 years in a row where they've been in this situation where they've qualified for Champions Cup, struggled early, struggled managing that extra competition, and then finished really strong. In 2023, they ended up finishing in second, which is why a lot of people projected them to finish and win the Supporter Shield this season because they looked so great in 2023. And they had a stronger roster this year. Same issues in 2024, but their second half of the season, they finished on 35 points, 11 wins, 2 draws, 4 losses. And if you equate that out, that's like 70 points for a season. So their second half of the year was very, very strong. More of what I expected because they have talent at all 3 lines. Their forwards are, I mean, they just have a backup that's a starting caliber backup on their forward line at every position up there, up top. Their midfield is very strong. They have, really high quality starters across the board there, and their defensive line as well. They haven't kept the clean sheets that I think maybe we expected in terms of just their quality defensively, but they have quality across the board. Oscar Pareja, you mentioned him as well. One of the better coaches, I think, in the Eastern Conference for sure, just in terms of
Nice.
his ability to get results.
Yeah. When we talk about momentum, right? We've talked a lot about, like Charlotte FC these last 5 games,
Yeah.
right? Orlando as well as a team. I think in the last 10 matches they've had 7 wins and only one loss.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes to show you that the momentum that they've built heading into the last part of the season, right? Aaron, talk to me about this Orlando team.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We spoke about it earlier, but like they just have their consistent players that always show up, and I
Yep.
think that's what Charlotte is struggle with. And I don't want to get too big into Charlotte right now, but they have 3 players each section of the field that show up every weekend and have only gotten better throughout the year. They've had a consistent lineup pretty much that they have their chemistry, and I think they just started slow. They had to compete in a couple different tournaments, a couple different situations. They had a couple rough losses, but throughout the season, they've caught their form, and their lineup pretty much has not changed. I think Charlotte has gotten that consistency as well, so we're really coming to clash with a team that's gained consistency. We're consistent now, so I think it should turn into a good match. But I think them having solid players at each position. I'm pretty sure everybody on the team has at least scored a goal this year for Orlando, obviously, except for the keeper, but everybody in field has a goal from what I saw, even down to the defense. So
Yep.
they click all across the board, and it's just taking them time, but they have it now.
Nice. Let's touch on that forward line a little bit. I
Yeah.
mean, they have guys like Duncan Maguire, right?
Yep.
You know, they have guys like Enrique, like Luis Muriel, Colombian international,
Yep.
right? You know, obviously Facundo Torres, right? So I mean,
100%.
this is a very strong forward line that they
Yeah.
have, you know, a lot of attacking options, you know. When you're a coach and you have something like that, Brian, how much confidence does that instill?
I mean, a ton, and you can rotate, right? Because you also, I mean, you didn't even mention Martin Ojeda,
Yep.
Ladero as well in the midfield. So you have a starter and a rotation piece across that entire front line. Because you also got Enrique and Duncan Maguire, all those guys. Muriel up top, Torres, obviously. Martin Ojeda can play centrally as a 10. He can also play on either wing. So he's a good rotation piece there with Ladero as well. Both of those guys have plenty of assists. I think. Martin Ojeda has 9, Ladero has 7 assists. So it's just you have creators, they can be rotated in and out. You have scorers who can be rotated in and out. It makes for a 90-minute squad, a team that can constantly come at you and attack you in multiple ways. They're also capable of keeping possession, which they're going to do, I think, against Charlotte. Have a lot of possession, pretty typical for Charlotte FC's season. But at the same time, Orlando can also hit you on the counter. They've got pace. Angulo and Facundo Torres are capable of stretching the field and hitting you directly as well. So they have a lot of dimensions to their style of play.
Nice. Yep. And then we talk about, you know, obviously goalkeeper of the year contender in
Yep.
our eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Has to be it,
Yeah.
Kalina, right? But
Yep.
when you look at a team like Orlando, they've got an experienced guy in the back, like Pedro Galles. You know,
Yep.
how important is it? Maybe Aaron, talk to us a little bit about that. Having somebody with that much experience in your as a goalkeeper.
I mean, having experience at the goalkeeper position is big, especially whenever it's a veteran. Because one, I mean, a goalkeeper is there to save goals, but they're also there to pretty much conduct the entire team. You know, a lot of people look over that, and we've seen some keepers in the past of Charlotte that were pretty quiet, and that's when our defense was at the worst. So having a good keeper not only can save you, many of games, but they're there to construct the entire defense and kind of move them around. I think that's why Orlando's defense kind of started slow. Obviously they have like really low average defensive rating, but chemistry over time. You have goalkeeper telling the defenders what to do, who to mark, where people are. That's big for the team, and I think Clean is also going into that. And we had a defensive change earlier this year. We saw with Reem, and I think that chemistry is there now. Clean and Reem are communicating a whole lot more, and Reem's really vocal. And keepers do a whole lot for the team, more than just saving goals, in my opinion. So
Yeah, it's a good point to bring up.
Yeah, and I think also just last season, I mean, Orlando won their first round matchups with 2 clean sheets against Nashville, so they also know they've done this before. They've been here in this
It's a
situation
really good
before,
point.
and they've kept clean sheets. Obviously, Nashville is not generally one of the strongest attacking teams. They obviously have Hani Mukhtar, who's capable of putting away goals, but definitely a team that you can shut out. But still, being in that situation, keeping clean sheets, getting results and wins, which they've done in recent history. This team's going to go into this matchup thinking that they can get the job done, and they also have a home crowd behind them tonight. So I think they'll come in with a decent amount of confidence.
I want to jump in too, because like I am concerned on how big the nerves are going to get to us tonight.
Mhm.
Because obviously, I wonder how much people are thinking about last year's loss to New York, because that was a blow. So
It
how much?
was. But you know what? One thing I like a lot that I've seen this season so far is, or at least this week,
Yeah.
is when I went into the press conference with Dean Smith, when I spoke to Ashley Westwood, even Brent mentioned it, right? Like, we're talking about the series, they're talking about the next game.
Yeah.
And you know what? That mentality is really, really good for this squad to have, because whatever happens Friday, right, at home, like they can't think about that right now. They have to go in guns blazing into this Orlando match ready to go.
Yep.
And I feel that from the squad. And I asked Dean about that. And like that's the mentality that they have. So the momentum heading into this playoff match versus last year is totally different, right? Which is a
100%.
great thing, right? And so also let's touch a little bit about Oscar Pareja's tenure at Orlando City,
Mhm.
right? I mean, he was signed December of 2019, so 4 full seasons under him now, right? Every season they've qualified for playoff. Even that first year, right? If you look back, it was a COVID style,
There's
you
an
know,
asterisk
MLS
to it.
is back
Yeah.
Yep.
kind of tournament. He made it to that final as well. And so when you look at a coach that's coached you for 4 years, every season, right, he's made a playoff, right? He won the Open Cup with this Orlando team,
Yep.
right? So what have you seen from a coach like Oscar Pareja at
Yep.
Orlando City?
I mean, I think Orlando's developed themselves into an identity, right? They have a culture and an identity that is sort of you can observe it and see it on a week in, week out basis. The way they want to play, how Oscar wants to get this team to play and attack and maintain possession and control, with the ball. Also play with like some style as well, and just have a standard. I mean, they make the playoffs every year. That's now what they are. They're a perennial playoff team under him. They've won a trophy. They won the U.S. Open Cup, right? So now they're also capable of making deep runs in a tournament. They made it to a final in his first season in MLS's back. They've won a round against Nashville this last season, right? And I think he's established themselves as one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference as a coach and as a team as well. I think they're just if Charlotte want to show that, as Dean wants to show as a coach that he's capable of getting to that next tier, and if Charlotte as a team wants to show that they're capable of being one of the top teams in the East, I'd say like Orlando's kind of the gatekeeper of that. And so that's what this matchup really comes down to is like, for me, can Charlotte get into that top tier? And I feel like that road has to kind of go through Orlando to get there and demonstrate that.
Nice. I mean, you mentioned it early on as well. I think a lot of people even had, Orlando as potentially
Yeah.
winning the East this season,
Yep.
right? So I think that's a blend of two things. That's a blend of a good squad
Yep.
and good coaching. Anything you want to add on Pareja?
I mean, Brian, you really touched it all. They have a coach that they believe in, and what he says is what's going to happen really with that squad.
Mhm.
I think Charlotte's coming in with a new coach, so I think we're coming in with probably some more excitement. Maybe there is some complacency there that could factor into Orlando struggling. But I mean, you have a coach for 4 years. You stand behind him as a player. He owns the locker room. Everybody in that club is behind him. So I think that's definitely Orlando's one up on us this year.
Nice. And you briefly touched on it as well, but all right, you have a coach in Oscar Parejas who's been here for 4 years,
Yeah.
knows the squad, knows this city, knows his team, right?
Mhm.
Versus a new coach in Dean Smith who's done exceptional for us,
Yeah.
finishing 5th, right? But are we giving Oscar Pareja that edge over Dean Smith, knowing that he's played a playoff series, knowing that he understands the MLS a bit better than Dean Smith so far?
Yeah, I mean, I would slightly. The one caveat to that is that Dean Smith has tournament experience as well. Getting Aston Villa, to qualify for promotion to the Premier League. So it's not like Dean Smith hasn't dealt with pressure, tournaments, things like that. It just really is going to come down to, and then I think that's what we're going to see this weekend. How much does that translate to the MLS and an MLS style tournament? So far, we've seen a lot of the pressures that Dean Smith has had in his experience coaching in England has translated to results in MLS. Now it's tournament time. Can that translation continue through this tournament? And I think that's really what this comes down to. How much does Dean Smith's experience match up against an experienced MLS coach?
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up. Also, yeah, experience versus experience.
Yeah.
While Oscar Pareja may have a lot of MLS experience,
Yeah.
Dean Smith has a lot of experience, and we've seen that this season where he's been thrown into a new squad while we were all complaining about only one DP heading into the season.
Yep.
He was chill about it, so I think that extra factor is something that like you don't think about as much, but heading into a game like this, you're like, okay, this is something that this guy can pull from.
I think, and I've watched a whole lot of coaches across many different leagues. Dean is probably one of the most cool, calm, and collective guys, and he's not an emotional coach at all. He's very straightforward. He knows what he wants to do and he does it. He's also very strategic behind it. He's a big numbers guy and he's just a big decision maker. But I think that with the format of the MLS, he that experience overseas is good, but we also have a whole lot more room of we have a whole lot more room to make mistakes right now. This is a 3-game series. It's not aggregate. I think that we could go into this first game, and if it's bad, we've seen Dean turn stuff around instantly overnight. We've seen it recently, but I think that we have room for a mistake here if things were to go bad. And Dean, I have full confidence in him turning it around because he is very dynamic. We've seen that. He's played, I think, 32 different players this year. Considering looking at Preyes, it's like 60 something over 4 years. So Dean's figured stuff out, and he's comfortable to do it, and he believes in everybody that we have.
Nice. All right, let's talk a little bit also about the head-to-head so far this season between Charlotte FC and Orlando.
Yeah.
Obviously, the first match at the bank, we were leading, right, 1-0. I think it was a Vargas goal that we were leading, and then Scott Arfield got a red card.
Yeah.
Right, and so that game ended up finishing 2-2. Bronico goal, Duncan Maguire and Facundo Torres scored for Orlando, right? So it's really hard to assess that first match when you lost a player and you were a man down for, I think, 60 minutes of that match, right?
It was long.
Still 2-2 is a respectable score against a team like Orlando, who still at that point of the season weren't looking too hot.
Yeah.
Right? Then take it to when last time we came here, right? Where, I think Tim Ream started, Andrew Privet was out of the lineup, right? The team didn't look like it was clicking. And again, Duncan Maguire and Facundo Torres, right, had a number on us, right? So is there something to say about them not being able to have beaten this squad over the two games that they've played so far?
I mean, I honestly think this matchup is pretty even, pretty neck and neck, even though Orlando have had the better of it so far this year. I do think that first matchup is, I mean, you can't really analyze it and compare it to what's happening now. A red card plays a huge role in that because I do think Charlotte FC kind of had the front foot in a decent portion if you factor out the red card. And then the 2-0 loss was during a time when Charlotte FC were definitely trying to stop some bleeding and figuring out how to get momentum back. So I do feel like this will be a bit of a new phase for both. I mean, really for both clubs because Orlando is coming off of a loss in their last regular season game. Charlotte FC are riding a 5-game unbeaten streak. So there is, I think it's really neck and neck. Regardless, both teams match up well. They play a little bit different in terms of style, and I think there's an opportunity for Charlotte to kind of mend this, get this monkey off their back in terms of just not beating Orlando. It's the last time they beat Orlando was like March of 2023 when it was Charlotte's first win of that season. So like that's the last time Charlotte had beaten Orlando.
In
Orlando. Yeah, in Orlando that game was, and the first time they've beaten Orlando, last time they've beaten Orlando in MLS play. So I think this is an opportunity for Charlotte to really feel like ride this momentum and try to get themselves a win. Well, and you mentioned it earlier, like the pressure should be off Charlotte a little bit because when you're the underdog team, right, the lower seed team in a 3-game series, you have to win one of your road matchups, but you don't have to win the first one.
Exactly.
As long as you win your home game, regardless, you have to win your home game, right? That's the key. But like if they fall in this one, draw, losing PKs, however it ends up being able to rebound from that to your home game, you still give yourself that opportunity to come back and get a result. I really feel like this should be a game where Charlotte plays pretty freely, knowing that the pressure kind of is on Orlando, because if Orlando drops, now they've got kind of a short week playing on Friday and having to go on the road. So for me, Charlotte should feel like there's an edge in that direction mentality-wise. We're like, hey, let's just go in there, be ourselves. The pressure should be on. We should feel like the pressure should be on Orlando to win their home game, and let's just go in there and have some fun and see what we can do.
I totally agree with you. Like, I think all of the MLS knows that Charlotte FC at the bank is deadly.
Mhm.
There's just something about Charlotte being the best team that plays at Bank of America, ironically.
Yeah.
But I mean, back to the point, like the 2 matches that we played, I can't even factor those in. Like the first one was a silly game. Like we should have won that game, and then us trying to find our form, like that was Charlotte FC is a very emotional team. During that dark time, I think that was we've seen it before in the past under other coaches, but whenever Charlotte struggles, they struggle for a while. It's
Mhm.
hard for the players to get out of it. I think that's an experience thing. But we're at our peak. This is the best we've ever seen the team like
Yeah.
in a row. I mean, we're averaging what 2-3 goals a match,
Yep.
and we're coming into it. Orlando just lost, like you said. They're not an emotional team. They're veterans, so they're going to come into it. They've already forgotten about it. But I think
Mhm.
Charlotte is still really high on their mountain. We're going to come into this game strong, like you said, play freely because what's the worst that can happen? We still have 2 more games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
If we take tonight, we go to the bank, and Orlando's terrified.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that Vaughn mentioned in our live as well that I think is great is that the loss in Orlando last time was that true wake up call, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of get a chance to amend that this
Yeah.
weekend as well, where you go in and you're like, okay, like this is kind of where we built our momentum. We're a totally different team,
Yeah.
and like you mentioned, Brian, that difference in momentum, right? At least from that last match where you go away, you win 3-0 in DC, where you've never won before,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? And so now you're coming into this match. We're like, okay, we just pulled the win away our last match versus Orlando, just lost to Atlanta United at home, right? So kind of that mentality going in, that built-in momentum, I think is
Yeah.
great as well, just from a psyche perspective
Yeah.
from this team.
And not to mention too, like for our defense that has had like some highs and lows this year, we went in last week and shut out arguably the best attacker in the league.
Yeah,
You know,
top scorer of
if
the league
if
for
we
sure.
forget
Yeah.
about Messi, Suarez, like they've had their year, but consistently highest goal scorer, like you said, Benteke, we shut him out, and really he was ghost. He had one play I think I can remember off the top of my head, but you know, talking about playing veterans tonight, we can come in if we can use that confidence, we really can come off of something.
For
Yeah.
sure. Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about, some key players heading
Yeah.
into this game for both Charlotte and for Orlando City, right? I mean, one thing that sticks out to me, like I mentioned, right? Both Duncan McGuire and Facundo
Yeah.
Torres scored both at the bank and in Orlando against us this season, 2-2, 2-0, right? So obviously those have to be two key players for Orlando, right? From the Charlotte perspective, you've got, Patrick Ajiman, who could potentially, if he starts tonight, right?
Yeah.
He's been in hot form. Liel Labada, another player that's been in hot form. So talk to me about some of the players. I'll start with you, Aaron,
Yeah,
that you see could be key for this match.
I think my pick is Pep. He's really picked up his form in the last 2 or 3 matches. I think that the way Pep Biel has came in to the lineup, people really weren't big on him after one
Mhm.
game. And you guys know me, I keep faith in our players.
Yeah.
I was the biggest Copetti stand for a while, but people really wanted Pep to sit. They were really upset because a lot of people saw that signing as like a last second, like everything else failed. Let's just get this guy.
Mhm.
I saw the vision with it, and I think really the way Dean is playing him, moving him out to the right, having him really just free flowing is Pep is excited for it. He came in off of a preseason. He's in form. He was excited to come here and just start, and we saw that. I think he got some of the jitters out. He came into this team now as being he's everywhere. Like some of the passes we saw from him last week was some of the best passes I've seen from a Charlotte FC player. I think also he knows that he needs to come into the series strong because he's playing to get a contract. He's really playing to win over the team and get some money. You mentioned Abada, you mentioned Patrick, but I think Pep is going to be a key player tonight. I think he's really going to play with that passion, that confidence, and also I think Urso, if he makes the starting lineup, we've seen him here recently. We talked about it last night. Like revenge games are big, and he knows the ins and outs of this team because he's been there, and he could come in with that extra piece of confidence, really show up tonight and say, "This is what you guys are missing. You got rid of me. I'm going to show you what I'm about."
Yeah.
100%. You did a great article, shameless plug,
Yeah.
on maybe some key battles
Yeah.
on the field tonight. Talk to us a little bit more about
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned Pep Biel. I think he's easily the key attacking piece for Charlotte FC. So on that battle, then is him against Rafael Santos, who is Orlando's left back. He's an attacking minded left back who with Orlando keep trying to maintain possession. They're going to try to push Biel back. Rafael Santos is going to try to get forward, use that possession. So it's like their attack is going to be their defense, right? Rafael Santos is going to try to get forward with the ball. He leads. He's like one of their main key players in terms of getting crosses into the box. So he's going to be trying to get forward. He also just is one of their most accurate passers. He has the most passes per game. Him and Cesar Arujo, who also is going to be one of their key players in the middle. I think that matchup between him and Brant Bronico is going to be really key. Bronico is kind of being underlooked as maybe Charlotte's most informed player right now in terms of what he does for that team in the middle, always running, also getting forward, creating chances for those attackers. So I think that matchup is going to be key. Can he disrupt Cesar Araujo and his passing ability and their possession from Orlando? And then lastly, I think Facundo Torres, you mentioned it at the top, him versus Tim Ream on that side of the field is going to be really key. Tim Ream's kind of been the sort of the stability on that left side, staying back, letting Nathan Byrne get up forward on the other side. So can Tim Ream match up well against Facundo Torres and keep him quiet? Because obviously when Facundo is on, Orlando's at a whole nother level. Now he is a young player and he kind of, has ups and downs. There's times when he's not really getting those goal contributions, but if he's in form, he's one of the top players in this league. And so keeping him quiet is going to be super key for Charlotte FC.
Nice. You speak of Facundo Torres, right?
Yep.
Top goal scorer for Orlando City this season
Yeah.
as well, right? And so I want to touch on the front three tonight and what that could look like, right? You have the option. I think on the wings, it's pretty set. If, Abada and Pep Biel have shown this season, right? That near the end, you start them, you get a lot of production, right?
Yep.
Obviously, Kerwin Vargas came in at the last game, but I still think Abada has the edge over him, right? Now, the striker position is a position that we talk a lot about, right?
Yeah.
Karol Swiderski's come in, he's been in form, scoring goals these last couple of games. Pat, whether he starts off the bench or starts from the get-go, is putting up goals, right?
Yep.
So from a perspective of looking at playing Orlando, would you rather start with a striker like Patrick, 6'5", very commanding, right, can create his own chances? Or would you rather start with a guy like Karol Swiderski, very technical player, right, likes to come back, grab the ball as well, but, he's been a little bit more lethal in that inside the 18, if you look back, our last home match, right, his first goal came off of a rebound that he sniffed. That's a striker instinct type of goal.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Dean Smith liked a lot about seeing that type of goal from Karol Swiderski.
So actually what I think we learned most out of the DC game was that as long as Pep Bial is the key player in Charlotte FC's attack, it really won't matter. Karol or Pat, Dean Smith has some flexibility. He can opt for either strategy, and he has a chance to have it work because Bial is in form. So I think really that really, for me, is what it comes down to. Dean can choose either direction, and he can, test it out. And then the big thing is going to be in this matchup for both teams, right? The striker position is a rotational position for both teams. Orlando City has 3 capable starting strikers. Charlotte has 2. So when they choose to rotate and change the strategy and the tactics of this team is going to be super key, I think, in this matchup for both this game and throughout the series. When do they make those substitutions? When do they change? When do they kind of evolve their strategy through the game is super key. So I think really I'm open to either. I think Dean is going to probably opt for Karol Swiderski. He's shown to be, during this unbeaten stretch, be really consistent with his method and his setup and starting with that and then rotating in players to change things up as the game progresses. So I expect Karol to start. But I think that's going to be one of the keys for both of these teams. How do they rotate? Do they time those rotations and changes to the squad throughout the matchup well? And I think that really could come down to who wins this series, is which coach makes the decisive, bold decision at the right time best.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, you talked about those key moments.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, even Dean mentioned it. The table didn't lie, right? They finished 5th, Orlando 4th.
Yeah.
Just right there, those small individual changes and details could be the difference between Orlando going through or Charlotte going through.
Yep.
Obviously, Brian mentioned Pep being the key. What do you see, maybe Swiderski or Pat?
I think Swiderski starts. To the point of us playing a veteran coach and everything, the options that we do have does make this more of a toss-up. Dean's comment of the small differences do make these teams unique, because really tonight, looking at it from a technical standpoint and a strategy standpoint, you don't know who you're going to play, and that makes it big. And the series also makes it big. I've always been big on, Pat coming in. He's a 65-minute guy and finishing the game. Carroll can wear many different players out, being all over the field, being fluid along with Pep. Patrick comes in, he plays a tired defense, and he's there. If we have the passers and the people that can get there, Pat has. We've spoken about it. We've debated about it. Patrick's gotten a lot better with including the team in his play. Yeah. Before I saw a lot of tunnel vision from him, and he gets the ball, he looks to goal, and he's not looking at anybody else. With time and experience, and I think Dean's really worked on him with that as well. Like we saw it
improve.
Yeah, we saw it before in the past couple of weeks. Pat can beat people and look for that pass. That's what he's getting good at, and I think that in the 65th minute, we can give him over the top balls and let him beat some people, but he also can look for a pass.
Yeah.
And I like that. So he's really kind of combining that just brute force, fast, big target man, and he's becoming technical as well. We're seeing it slowly over time.
Do you give the edge to Orlando in the forward line, right? Given the fact, at least the striker position, right, that they have multiple options. Well, I mean, we have really good options in Pat and Swiderski, but I mean, they've got a U22 signing, they've got a DP striker, right? They've got Duncan McGuire, who was one mistake away from being at a different team last season.
On a $4 million transfer. So I give Orlando the edge for sure. I think they have the amount of pieces they have. It's just more established. I would say if they're kind of like a year ahead, right? So if you take this Charlotte squad, give them another year, I would say their forward line has a chance to kind of be more comparable to Orlando. I do give Orlando the edge there. They've just made a lot of the kind of signings. They got lucky. They got Duncan McGuire back. So they had an extra piece there that they weren't expecting to have, right? They also still signed Muriel. They have 3 starting strikers on this team. They have multiple cams they can rotate in and out with, Ojeda and Ladero. And right now they just have both wings where they can also rotate, guys in and out, with Ojeda being able to switch on both wings, and then Torres and Angulo are both more than capable top tier starting wingers. So I just think they're kind of more established in terms of who those players are and what their roles are, and I don't think the dip in the rotation changes so much. I do feel like we've talked about that with Charlotte FC, rotating their players on and not seeing the dip. I do feel like right now, when you switch out like an Abada for Vargas, been a bit of a dip in terms of just talent there and just end result. And I feel like those are the margins that maybe over the series don't pan out to be that great, because I mean, Vargas is still able to get those opportunities, and do something with them from time to time. But in really, this is a micro, right? This is not the big picture. This is down to finite moments, right? And so the margin of error between an Abada being out there and a Vargas could be the end result. And I just feel like with Orlando's attack, those margins are tighter in terms of just that rotation being stronger.
Yeah, I think in the details, like in those small margins, you're right. I think Orlando may have an edge over us. Right, but
on the forward line, defensively,
I also think though, from a coaching perspective, I wouldn't know how to answer that.
Yeah.
Right, because Dean has a lot of experience.
Yes.
Right. Oscar Pereira has a lot of MLS experience.
Yep.
So which one will play a bigger factor?
Yeah.
Well, we may find out tonight. Right.
We're
gonna have to find.
We're gonna find out tonight,
right?
For sure.
Awesome. We're gonna shift gears a little bit as well, and I want to talk a little bit about one of the reasons why we're wearing these scarves, right? If you look at it, we have a new partnership. We're partnered with Thompson Child and Family Focus, and they're a nonprofit that provides comprehensive evidence-based services and trauma-informed care for children in the Charlotte area, right? And in that area, right? Some of the services that they provide are in the mental health space, also programs for the youth with behavioral health challenges. And so as we get into this partnership, I want you guys to watch a quick video real quickly.
For almost 140 years, Thompson Child and Family Focus has served the most vulnerable in our community. Today, with a big heart, Thompson, our dedicated team, and the donors who support our mission continue to build a foundation for transforming the lives of children at risk. We believe that changing lives changes everything, and that positive change radiates across families and throughout communities. Each life we transform makes an impact, in turn, making our community stronger. Every day, the life-altering services and care Thompson provides make an extraordinary difference, helping our neighbors to heal and thrive. Our educated, trustworthy, and passionate staff deliver a wide range of evidence-based practices, including early childhood programs to inspire education, provide behavioral therapy, and encourage healthy development. The work we do makes all the difference in the world to the children, families, and communities we serve. Join us as Thompson continues to transform lives and lead the way toward a future where our ultimate vision has come true. All children healthy, all families thriving, all communities strong. Thompson Child and Family Focus. Changing lives changes everything.
Awesome. So I'm really excited. So when we partner up with people, we don't just want to partner up or have a sponsorship with anybody here at Top Bin 90. We want to work with companies that we believe are doing great things in the community, and we know that this nonprofit is doing a lot of great things. And so check this out. Like this next weekend, that home match on Friday, they will be giving away these scarves with every $50 donation that you make to them. So you'll be able to get one of these really cool scarves. I think Cisco and CJ have been playing them as we're speaking. But not only that, so you'll get a scarf, and also they'll be donating a scarf to one of the kids in the Thompson group as well, which is pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Brian, you've been in this space before. Can
Yeah.
you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, youth services. That space is just a super important part of uplifting communities in general, and just being a part of it, and partnered with an organization like this who's really focused on just improving people's lives is just this is the kind of work I love being a part of. And I mean, that's what I went to school for, was being involved in youth services. And it's tough work, it's important work, and it requires funding and time to be able to do it well and to help all of our communities be uplifted. And I think that's really what this organization is aiming to do, and have done a lot of good work in doing that. And so I like being a part of it.
Yep. So obviously you can go online, and we'll link it below once we push this pod out. But also this Friday, they will be at the tailgate as well. So if you want to go online and make a donation and get a scarf, or before the match at home this weekend, right? They'll be at the tailgate, right? You can go get a scarf, meet some of the people that are involved with Thompson, right? And so we've had a chance to just sit down with them and
Yeah.
kind of see their mission, and it's something that I think is really, really cool that they're doing in the community.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, couple more things, and then we'll be done, and we'll get ready to head over to Orlando Stadium.
Yeah.
A couple things I want to touch on that are more MLS broad versus just Charlotte specific, but that they do affect Charlotte, right? I think Paul Tenorio from the Athletic this weekend put out an article where MLS is looking to potentially maybe change that MLS schedule from fall to spring to align more with the European calendar, to line up more with matches in the summer, right? Because we see it like sometimes some of our players they aren't with the squad or aren't playing because they're on international duty, right? And MLS is continuing, right? And so one of the things that I've noticed from MLS is, right, it continues to grow, and I think they want to establish themselves not only in the American market, but maybe in the Latin American market as well, and maybe more eyes, right? So I want your guys' thoughts and opinions a bit on, what this could potentially look like, right? And if it's a good idea.
Yeah, well, I mean, no matter what decision you make, there's pros and cons, right?
Right.
One of the pros to the setup they have right now is, I mean, one, You're not competing with the local markets in America that already exist with these major sports markets, right? I mean, the reason the Premier League is where it's at now is because a lot of the work they did analyzing the success of NFL in the 90s and implementing those strategies to the Premier League now, right? So the NFL is super influential in a lot of ways. So MLS kind of being a smaller organization, staying out of that kind of competitive sphere as best they can with the schedule they have now is a huge pro in terms of just marketing their brand. If you switch to fall spring, you have you're now competing with the NFL schedule, which could be a huge con. At the same time, you're now kind of setting up your ability to grow as an organization way better. Zoran was quoted in an article that discussed by the Athletic that discussed switching to a fall spring schedule. As teams, they can work the transfer windows better if they match with other markets around the world, and improving those squads could then improve the viewership if you're able to make more competitive transfers, right? More, better players transferred in improves the viewership of the league. We saw that with Messi coming here, right? The Messi effect has been massive. More transfers have happened than ever before. More bigger, iconic moves have been made, and the views have gone up. So there's pros and cons to both. I think the other one that kind of gets overlooked a little bit is the weather. That is a factor in the U.S. that has so many different changing temperatures and climates throughout the country. Does have a role, right? Montreal already has to do like 6 road games to start their season every year. It's such a brutal schedule for them. They start 6 road matches out of the gate. That could, that's going to have an impact. So if you switch to a fall spring schedule, Montreal, right? Vancouver, Minnesota, Chicago, even some of these markets where they just started getting soccer specific stadiums out of the gate. A lot of their NFL stadiums have domes because to take out that weather factor. So I do think weather does play a role. Market and managing the brand obviously is probably going to take precedence, just because that's how you keep the lights on and everything like that. But weather will play a factor. We already saw like Salt Lake was playing in like a foot of snow against LAFC in the beginning of the season, so that will play a factor as well.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that because I worked 2.5 years at NASCAR, and the market and the decision making really plays a massive role into those things. And I really think, I hope that's the way the MLS is going to spin this, because you have to look externally. Obviously, they're competing with a lot of different things, but I think we need to make sure this decision is more of a structural decision and not an emotional decision.
Yeah.
And to the point, whether fans are upset about that or they're looking in an odd way, but this is professional sports, so you really gotta play through whatever you're gonna play through.
Yep.
And those teams that are up north, even the teams that are in Canada, like once you get used to playing in it, those are your strengths.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things with Orlando. Like this team plays in this humid, hot weather year round. Like they can come here and do it, and teams from up north might struggle in it. So you really, if you have your home stadium up there, get used to it. You can really, you can play that as to your strength. It's your home stadium. You can get used to that weather, that climate, and really use it for yourself. But the biggest thing is, the transfer market. We missed out on 3 weeks this year of signing someone from the Prem that we probably could have. I mean, Chelsea had 255 players that we could have probably got one because they needed to clear someone out. So the MLS loses out on so much of that, and we get more big names here in the MLS, viewership goes up.
Yep.
We're competing with other things, but more markets are becoming aware. I mean, the viewership for Messi is going up across the world, and Apple TV has really, really made that easy.
Yep.
It's one subscription. You see many of leagues that are transferring into, NASCAR has over 5 next year. So that's difficult. There's one platform you can log into and watch an MLS game. If we can align more with the global market, viewership will go up. It's simple.
Yeah, definitely. It's a very interesting, debate to have, right? I mean, people that don't really watch MLS just see it as a pure positive.
Yeah.
But then when you watch MLS, you kind of know, right, like some of the stuff that you mentioned, right, where, some of the negatives that some of the teams can be affected by, right?
Yep.
And so it's very interesting to see what will happen. What Aaron said is right on the money as well, where like the number one thing that like even the message from Dean Smith when I asked him this, even Zoran quotes, is that transfer window, right? I mean, that those last 2-3 weeks that where MLS calendar closed versus, you know, the European calendar was still open, right?
Yeah.
The European window was still open, right? They missed on some opportunities,
Mhm.
right? Because, you know, that played a factor here, right? And so I think that's like a key change that I think Charlotte is kind of wanting to push
Yeah.
fast. The next thing would be that calendar change. We'll see what it's like. Dean said they're from what I get is like, okay, we're kind of open to it, but like this is kind of our priority right now, which is, you know,
Yeah.
that transfer window.
And we were especially affected by it. Like we had all of our transfers like right at the end just like fail. They all fall through for whatever reason, you know. And I think we have those extra weeks. And Dean coming from the Prem had that mindset of probably let's look towards that. And we, like he said, we missed out on it, and that's
Mhm.
simply due to dates.
Now, I do think when it comes to the transfer side of things, the league should look at that as like a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
I do feel like from a Charlotte's like team specific standpoint, if you have rules in play, you got to work within the rules you have
Yeah,
to make things
100%.
work. And
Yeah.
and then complaining about it after the fact is kind of for me a little bit null and void because
Yeah.
it's like you didn't play the rules right. Everybody else is playing by the rules, so play by the rules.
It
And
can't be your
so,
scapegoat.
Fair
yeah,
point.
it can't
fair
be
point.
the reason why you don't get what you need to get done.
Yep.
done.
Yeah.
We all
Yep.
follow the same rules.
Yeah,
Is what
exactly.
it is at the end of the day.
Nice.
Yep.
Awesome. And then speaking of, you know, rules and, you know, we've seen this best out of 3 series, right? Last year it played into effect once that Apple deal came through, right?
Yep.
We're seeing it again, right? Someone made a very good comment on Twitter, I think today or yesterday, right? Where you saw like RSL played LA Galaxy and they got absolutely destroyed.
Colorado.
Colorado, sorry, yeah, Colorado 5-0,
Yep.
right? And you know, so they win that first game, but Colorado still has a chance
Mm-hmm.
to go through, right? Because they'll come back. It starts from scratch now again, where okay,
Yeah.
obviously Galaxy have the up on that, but being a 3-game series, right? Versus if a match ends 5-0, there's really no added benefit outside of winning that first series, right?
Yeah.
And you know, Dean kind of alluded to it in the press conference. He didn't want to say he didn't like it,
Yeah.
but what I've learned from Dean Smith this season is he'll figure out a way to say he doesn't like something
Yeah.
without sometimes not necessarily saying it that like, okay,
Yeah.
this is stupid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk to me about what you see, maybe some of the pros and cons behind this 3-game series. I'll start with you, Aaron.
I mean, I think the pros is definitely for viewership.
Mhm.
I think the American market is very familiar with the series rather than, you know, aggregate.
Mhm.
You know, I know people in my personal life that the aggregate confuses, but looking at the global market, I mean, we're also seeing those changes there. In the past few years, we've seen the away goal, you know, upside to tournaments go away. You know, Champions League got rid of it. You know, we're no longer seeing an away goal being worth 2 points in an aggregate series. But I think it helps out, especially whenever you have an emotional team that is dealt with confidence issues. They don't have to worry about what happened in the last game. You know, say if we lose 2-0 tonight, they don't have to worry about winning 3-0 in the next game, etc. But every game really is a fresh slate,
Yeah.
and I think that's really nice to see. Is for fans too. You know, you can come into a game with fresh confidence. You don't have to worry about what happened in the past. Obviously, if you lose, it sucks, but you don't have to worry about winning a game and scoring 3 goals. You know, imagine if Colorado had to go into the next game and like we have to score 6 to even be up.
I'm for me, it's just more of a complacency factor that I
too,
talk
yeah.
about. Obviously,
Yeah.
there's both pros and cons to it, right? And so, I'll get your thoughts on it, Brian.
Yeah, I think while the global market may be used to kind of the aggregate format, that's only really in the soccer specific landscape,
That's
right?
true.
So if you look at tennis, they play games. If Fidel wins 6-0, he's still got to win the next game and the next game, right? There's no aggregate to his 6-0.
Yeah.
So really the world market isn't that off. It's the soccer specific world market that hasn't really had to compete with another sport within the soccer landscape or outside of it too often. So this is the one qualm I have with a lot of the European transfers and just thought leaders that come to MLS and kind of impose what they know as their tradition in kind of this landscape. I love the debate on it,
Mhm.
But I don't necessarily think like the aggregate is just like the end all be all the best format, right? LA Galaxy is going to complain about it right now because they're up 5-0,
Yeah.
right? So they're going to want a different rule set that benefits them. Now, there's going to be a time when LA Galaxy's down 5-0, and then they're gonna risk a different rule set. That's just kind of how people operate. Whether it's the offside rule, whether it's the aggregate rule, people are emotional about things that benefit or don't benefit themselves. And
Sure.
so for me, I think you can go with either rule set. I like the idea that teams have an opportunity to compete throughout, and that's me growing up in the baseball world, right? Never had an issue with an aggregate versus non-aggregate setup. I think there's a lot of, I mean, there's a rule base that you have. Can you work within that rules and find success?
Yeah.
I think that's really what it
Yeah.
boils down to. I have had my issues with a lot of what MLS has done, and I've actually started to settle on a lot of those because I continue to see a lot of the success that they're having and kind of fighting through those issues. They've had to deal with a pro rel debate since the beginning, and
Yeah.
that actually is starting to turn around in a lot of landscapes,
Yep.
right?
You see
Where
Argentina's changing their way.
100%, and
Yep.
and that debate can continue, and but the fact that MLS has kind of stood up for themselves, and they've had to deal with a lot of controversy, like the whole like PK 35-yard run up, right? So they've had some changes that they've made that were wrong and had issues with, but I think I also like the fact, and I can kind of have some pride in an MLS, an organization that is also still willing to kind of stand high and kind of really push on some of these rules, and then we'll see where the chips fall where they may, down the road. But I don't necessarily think it's like an issue where like it end all be all. Like LA Galaxy should still walk away with this series. Like if they don't, for me, it's more on them.
That's on
Like
them.
you have another
Yeah.
home game where you should have a distinct advantage. Colorado has no Mihailovic, no Cole Bassett.
Yeah.
Like there's so many other factors besides the 5-0 result and an aggregate scoreline that should factor in.
I mean, if you win 5-0, you should win the next game.
Yeah, you're a better.
But-
You should be the better team.
Hey, every game is different.
Yeah,
Every
yeah.
game is different.
But to your
Yeah.
point, like really quickly, like it is nice to see MLS having that confidence of being an adult leader, and then like
Yeah.
relating it to MLS Next Pro, they're trying new things there too. You
Yeah.
know, we have a league in the United States that's confident in itself and trying new things that people overseas are seeing and saying that's
Yeah.
weird, or they're picking up on it, like you said, the
Yeah.
Argentina league. You know, I miss 35-yard run-ups for PKs.
Yeah.
It's fun to see, but it's nice having a league that's confident in itself and trying new things because they want to grow and they're open to change. They're not just following the guys overseas saying this is how football should be.
And it's really MLS's brand, right? I feel like that's a big part of what MLS is kind of being that innovative league. I honestly love the Next Pro rule of like calling out your opponent. I
Oh,
think
yeah,
that's
that's
so
so
fun
fun.
and such
Yeah.
a nice edge. I think it's so fun. I don't know if MLS will ever implement it, but I do think it's such a fun edge to a game where like the advantage team has to call out the disadvantaged team and
Yeah.
say like you're the team we think we play well against, and call them out. And then if the loss happens, it's just
Yeah.
a fun dramatic dynamic that I think is really interesting that no sport
Yeah.
does.
It's a funny approach, like too,
Yeah.
like when you look at like how the coach like, oh, we played this team multiple times already.
Yeah.
We want to play
That's
the eighth
what they
seed.
did.
Yeah,
to- that's what they did. to
Yeah,
Cup
right.
Legacy.
You just think
Yeah.
they're the fourth team.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I
they
think
come into the game with a chip on their shoulder. Like
Yeah.
Crown Legacy came into that first game like we're the 8 seed, but you're not going to call us out like that, and they won.
Yeah.
100%.
And it's just cool. It's an emotional
Nice.
aspect.
Yeah, for this particular 3-game series, I think for where MLS is at and where it could go, right? I'm good with it.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
something different that's not totally like out off the wall that they're
No.
doing, right? So, but it is an interesting debate to have.
Yeah.
And then we'll end it finally. Obviously, we're in Orlando, right? First match tonight. We'll be doing some top coverage of that game tonight as well. Give us a little score prediction, and I'll start off with you, Aaron.
I'm gonna say 3-0 Charlotte.
3.
I think I think
Yeah.
I think the confidence that the team has is just strong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we don't care what other people are saying about us right now. We're doing something new. Byrne has that freedom to move wherever, and I think Dean swallowed his pride bringing Privet back in, but he did it in a unique way. He did it in a Dean way. It was like, I'm going to make this work. I realize that we're probably struggling without him. We changed up the team, and it's just flowing, man. Like whenever it flows, it's just nice.
Nice. Okay. To be fair, I think you said 4-1 Barca Madrid yesterday, right?
No. I said 4-1 Galaxy in Colorado.
Okay,
Nice.
yeah.
And then went
5-0.
to bed at like the 30th minute.
Yeah. He always moves back to Barca. You
Yeah,
see that?
yeah.
Always finds a
Hey,
way.
that 4-0
Yeah.
Lamine Yamal. He's the truth.
Yeah. I'm gonna do a pretty personal bias pick. I think I'm gonna go 2-2. Charlotte win on PKs.
Okay.
Nice.
So I want to see that drama. I want to
Pretty good
see some
watch.
goals.
Yeah,
I want to see some PKs. I think all of that is some excitement that I'd be down for. So that's what I'm going with. I think also the matchup is just super even. I don't know if there's a blowout in this one. I think I would be pretty surprised by that. Not that it couldn't happen. Both of these teams are in form, and if one team shows up better than the other, that could easily swing one. Like the pendulum could swing massively in one way. But I think this is a pretty tight matchup. 2-2 draw. Charlotte win on PKs because they got the goalkeeper of the year.
Yep, and Dean Smith mentioned it as well in his press conference. They've been practicing penalties.
Yeah,
Right.
Gotta be ready.
So they have to be ready, right?
Yep.
And I have the exact same score prediction. 2-2. It'll be a great game.
Yeah.
And we'll win it on pens.
Yeah.
Take the dub back to Charlotte, to the bank. Pack that out this Friday night. Hopefully we have like 50,000 people.
Yeah.
That would be great, right? This is the first playoff match in Charlotte FC history at home, right? So
This is
be
the
there,
first
right?
playoff game in Bank of America since 2015.
Which is insane, right? With that said, guys, thank you everybody that joined our live today. We're excited to head over to the game here shortly, and hopefully next time we do this, we're talking about a Charlotte dub. Go!